Hello and welcome to Nithrania YouTube channel. You're watching another episode of the Game in a Nutshell series designed for explaining the board game rules. My name is Branislav Berec, and in this video we're going to learn how to play Come Together from Chili Fox Games. To set the game up, choose the side of the player board for your current player count. This is the side for 2 to 4 player game or for a solo game. The other side is for a 5 and a 6 player games. Then sort these location tiles by their color and the number, which is the round number. Set aside the tiles for the second and the third round and randomly assign one round 1 tile to each of these 4 locations on the game board. Place the countdown marker on the leftmost space of this activation track. Separately shuffle this stage deck, star deck, audience deck and the camp deck. And when shuffling the camp cards, take out these starting camp cards out of that deck. Then from each deck, deal 4 cards face up about each of these 4 locations on that tile, filling the empty spaces from left to right. If there are more than 2 of these up-and-comer cards in any of the 4 displays, first discard the rightmost card and place it face up into a discard pile for that deck and refill the empty space with a new card. If necessary, repeat the process until there are maximum 2 of these up-and-comer cards in the display. Place one random standard newspaper tile about each of these 2 calendar slots for the day 1 and 2. And note, these are double-sided. You can choose whichever side you want. And then place this round 3 newspaper tile identified by this icon above the calendar slot for the day 3. And now, if there are maximum 4 up-and-comer cards in the entire display, so on average it's 1 up-and-comer card per each display, place this third round newspaper tile with this side up. If there would be more than 4, so 5 or more up-and-comer cards in the entire display, flip this third round tile to the side showing the up-and-comer symbol. Since we only have 4 up-and-comer cards, we have the side with the star symbol. Then each player takes a player board, and for the first game it's recommended that all players use this Come Together Music Festival side. Then randomly choose the starting player, and then other players would follow in a clockwise direction. And then use this setup card to determine how many components each player will receive for the start of the game. Use this side of the card for 3 to 6 player games. Use the other side for the 2 player game or the solo game. Since we have 3 players here, we will use this side. And now the first player will get the components from the first row, second player from the second row, and so on. So the first column indicates how many flower power tokens you get. The number in the brackets is only used in a special powers variant. Then the second number indicates how many active workers you will start the game with. Here it's 4 workers and you place them on this space on your player board. The next number indicates how many resting workers you will have. Those are placed on these spaces of your color next to these hippies buses. And the last number indicates how many workers you have in the reserve. Place these workers somewhere next to the game board. Then take one starting stage card. The card looks like this. It's double-sided. The other side is used in the special powers variant. Use it with this basic side up and place it above the top left space of your player board or of your festival board. Then take one random starting camp card and place it again face up below the bottom left space of your player board. Then take these 4 publicity markers and place them on your player board. Take this blue one and place it on the blue space. The orange one goes on the orange space, the white one on the white space, and the black one on this black space on the camp card. Then take both of your scoring markers and place them on the 0 spaces of these scoring tracks. And now each player gains 5 random planning cards. And in a 1, 2, 3 and a 4 player games, Choose 4 of those cards to keep and return the remaining one back to the box, and keep the chosen cards face up next to your festival board. And in a 5 or a 6 player game, choose one of those 5 cards and activate that card immediately, and then keep the remaining 4 in front of you face up next to the festival board. I'm going to cover the activation later in the video. In this example, you would gain these 2 meeples, the audience meeples, and you would place them on the tents on your camp card. I'm going to demonstrate a 3-player game, so there are only 4 cards selected in front of the player, and with that, the setup is complete. Come Together is taking place in the late 60s, and each player is organizing their own festival. They're trying to build the stage, build the camps for their audiences, and attract the best performers and best stars so that their festival has the best concerts. Starting with the first player, players take turns, continuing in a clockwise direction until the game ends. On your turn, you have to choose one of the following 3 options. The first option is to place a worker or workers. Take the required number of workers from your player board and place them on any vacant spot on any location. Unlike other worker placement games, you don't activate that location yet. For that, you or someone has to take the second option, which is taking your activation token, placing it on the next available activation spot, and then you would choose one entire location, and that location will be activated for all players. And the third option is to take all of your resting workers, which are next to your hippie bus on the game board, and place them back on your player board as active workers. After each activation, this countdown marker moves to the next space, and when it reaches the last space on this activation track, the end of the round is triggered. Players would score victory points based on the current day and the current newspaper tile. Players would also score their festivals and prepare the game for the next round. The game ends at the end of round 3, at the end of the 3rd day. In addition to the victory points you gain over the course of the game, you also score bonuses for these completed booths between the stages, and then the player with the most points is the winner. As I said, on your turn you have to choose one of the 3 options, and I'm going to describe these options now, and I will start with placing the workers. First, choose any empty space in any of these locations and place the indicated number of the workers on that space. You take those workers from your active workers area on your player board or your festival board and stack them on your chosen location space. So here we need 2 workers. Now immediately gain the bonus if there is a bonus available, and this heart symbol is only important in a 2-player game. I will cover the differences for a 2-player game at the end of the video. Now, you don't get the benefits or bonuses from those location spaces now. You only sort of reserve that space. You can find the explanation of these bonuses in the rulebook, but at least in a nutshell, when you gain this bonus, you get a meeple of the same color, and anytime you gain a meeple, you place it on one of these empty tents on your camp cards, and if you wouldn't have empty spaces, you can return one of your meeples back to the general supply and replace it with a new meeple. When you gain this bonus, you simply take one flower power token and add it to your reserve. With this bonus, you move your publicity token of the same color 1 space forward. Here it will be the blue marker. When you move these markers, ignore these symbols above the spaces. They are important at the end of the round. But when you reach or exceed the symbols inside the circle, you get those bonuses immediately. When you gain this bonus, you gain 1 additional active worker. So you take one of the workers from the reserved stack and add it to your active workers on your player board. And when you gain this bonus, you may activate one of your planning cards. You always start the game with 4 cards in this planning display, and over the course of the game you may have more or fewer cards here. And when you activate a card from this planning display, the activation depends on the type of the card. When you activate the stage card, you may place it about any of these stage spaces on your player board. It doesn't have to be adjacent to others, or you may even replace the stage card. In that case, you would remove that card and replace it with the new one. If you replace a card which is a standard planning card, that will be returned back to the box. Other types of cards are placed in their respective discard piles. When placing these stage cards, you don't have to match these booths, but if you do, you gain bonus points at the end of the game. When you activate the camp card, you must place it to the right of your existing camp cards. Unlike the stage cards, you may not place it anywhere, you may not replace any of your previous camp cards. You must append it to the right of the existing cards. Then, when you activate an artist card, which is either this up and comer or the star card, you take the card and place it above one of the stage cards. Again, you may place it above any of the stage cards, and you can even replace the artist card which is already placed in that space. When you activate these audience cards, you may take up to 2 meeples from the general supply and add them to your camp. On the starting planning card, there are 2 meeples depicted only. On the standard camp cards, there are 3 meeples depicted. Again, you may only take up to 2 of those meeples. After you activate the card, it's discarded, or again, if it's the starting planning card, you can return it back to the box. When you take the meeples, you can always rearrange them in these stands any way you want. Finally, when you activate this bonus card, take the bonuses depicted on the card, and again, the card is discarded. And there's one more bonus which I want to talk about. With this one, you gain this stage upgrade token, and you can either place it on the stage as the complete water booth, for which you gain victory points at the end of the game, or you may place it as the additional ticket in this space or any other spaces. And this is needed if you have a star which requires 4 meeples as the audience. For that, you would have 4 ticket spaces on that stage. The second option on your turn is to activate a location. When you do that, take your activation token, place it on the next available activation space and gain the bonus from that space immediately. And then choose one location on the game board and activate that location. You can only activate a location where you have at least one of your workers, but you activate the location for everyone. All players at the location may now simultaneously take the card or cards from the spaces and then advance their publicity markers. When you take the card, again you have 2 options. You may either activate that card immediately, and we have already covered the activation, or you may place that card in your planning area if you plan to activate it later. Then you may advance your publicity markers up to the number of steps equal to the number of occupied spaces in this location by all players. So both yellow and blue player may move their publicity markers up to 3 spaces. You may only move those publicity markers on these 2 depicted tracks, so here it's orange or black. You can distribute these steps on both tracks any way you want. So for example, with 3 steps you can move 2 steps on one track and 1 step on another, or 3 steps on one track only, and so on. Anytime you reach a bonus space, take that bonus immediately. Here it would be another space on the black track. With this one, you would immediately gain another green meeple, and so on. If you reach the end of the track, any further advancement is forfeited. Then this symbol means that each player in this location may spend 1 power flower token to take 1 further advancement on one of those tracks. So for example, for this power flower token, we could move one additional step on the black track. Then all the workers from the activated location become resting workers. So take them from the location and place them next to your hippie buses. Then discard any remaining cards in the display and refill the spaces with new cards from the deck. Similar to the setup rule, if you would have more than 2 up-and-comer cards, discard the rightmost one and draw the new card. You may never have more than 2 up-and-comer cards in any one display. Then take the activation token and place it next to your player board and move the countdown marker 1 space forward. One last note, anytime the draw deck runs out, reshuffle the discard pile and create the new draw deck. The third option on your turn is to take all your resting workers, those are workers next to your hippie bus, and place them back on your player board as active workers. Then you can perform one and only one of the following actions. You may take one of your reserved workers and add it to your active workers, so now you have more workers available. Or you may discard one of your active workers back to the stack of your reserved workers. So essentially you have one fewer worker available. However, you may immediately take the place workers action. The third option is to draw 3 cards from any of these 4 decks. Then choose one of those cards and place it in your planning area and discard the remaining 2. The end of the round is triggered when you place the activation token on the last space of the activation track. That doesn't apply in a 5-player game and a solo game. In a solo game, the mark for the end of the round is here, so when you place your activation token in this space, you would end the round. And similarly for the 5-player game, on the other side of the game board, it's also 1 space earlier than in a 6-player game. First, perform the location activation as usual. So players take their cards and advance the publicity markers, and then the remaining steps of the end of the round procedures are triggered. All players now take all the claimed cards from all the locations. So the yellow player would take this card and also this one. And again, you may either play the card or cards in the planning area or directly activating those cards. However, in this case, players don't move their publicity markers. They just claim the cards, nothing else. Then the newspaper tile will be scored. Each player in the game resolves the following steps. First, check this level of your publicity marker on this white track. If you would be in this location, you would be in a level 3. In this location or this one, you would be at a level 2. And over here, you would still be at 0 level. Now, based on the newspaper tile and based on your level on that white publicity track, gain the bonus or the penalty if you are in the lowest or the highest level. And then score the victory points based on the condition in this lower level of the tile. So here you would score nothing if you would be in the level 0 or 1, and you would score some victory points if you would be in level 2 or 3. However, for each column you can score maximum 8 and 12 points in this example. You can find a detailed description of all these scoring conditions in the rulebook. Now, after scoring the newspaper tile, you can return it back to the box. By the way, it may happen that your score goes below 0 to negative values. Then score your festival. Now we have these artists playing concerts in front of the audience. And to score the points for the artist, you have to take all the required meeples from your camp area and place them on the stage. If you have an artist which requires 4 meeples, you also must have this additional stage upgrade with the 4th ticket. So if you meet those criteria, move the meeples to the stage and then score that artist. If you manage to score the artist with 4 meeples required, these artists have victory points shown in the star in the top left corner. So here it's 4 victory points. Then score the bonuses from the stage. There is no bonus here But if you would score the artist on this stage, for example like this, you would also score 1 victory point for each green meeple here, so that would be 1 victory point. And then when you score this star artist, you also gain the highest number of victory points unlocked on this orange track. So for this artist, we would score 4 victory points, no bonus from the stage, and plus 4 victory points from the orange track. If you score the up-and-comer artist with this symbol, you score the bonus from the stage. Here it will be 1 victory point, and then you score the highest number of points unlocked on this cyan or the blue track. So here it would be 1 victory point plus 2, that's 3 in total. Note that each meeple can only be scored on one of the stages, so if we would score the up-and-comer artist here, we would not be able to score this star artist because we don't have enough meeples. On the other hand, if we score the star artist, we don't have enough meeples to score this up-and-comer. One additional note, even if you can score the artist, you are not required to do so. You may keep the artist in place, potentially replacing the stage card with some other card which gives you more bonuses, and you can score that artist in the next round. Once you scored all the artists, move the meeples back to the camp and place all the scored artists face down to the right of your player board. Then you have to check your camp limit. The maximum number of camp cards and meeples you can keep is determined by the position of your black marker on this black track. At the start of the game, it's 3 meeples and 2 cards, and you unlock the next space when you move the black marker to this position. If that black marker would be over here, you still only count this maximum numbers. In order to unlock this number, again, the black marker would have to be here, and so on. So if we would have the black marker in this position, we can have maximum 3 meeples and 2 cards. Remember, you can always rearrange the meeples on your cards any way you want. If you have more meeples than you can keep, you can discard any meeples of your choice, but you have to discard the camp cards from right to left. Finally, prepare the next round. All the workers from all the locations on the game board are placed on the resting space next to your hippies buses. Discard all the remaining cards from all the locations and return the location tiles back to the box. Take the location tiles for the next round and distribute them randomly. Then deal 4 cards to each display. And again, in each location you may have maximum 2 up-and-comer cards. Reset the position of your white marker back to the starting space of the white track, but keep all other publicity markers in their current spaces. Move the countdown marker to the first space of the activation track, and then the player who triggered the end of the round takes back the activation token, and the next player clockwise starts the next round with their turn. The game ends at the end of the 3rd round. After you perform the end of the round scoring for that 3rd round, then check the number of meeples you have on your player board. The player with the most meeples would score 4 victory points. The player with the least number of meeples would lose 4 victory points. In case of a tie, both players gain or lose those victory points. And then score victory points for complete booths on your stages. Again, this is also illustrated on the game board. For the water booth, you score 3 victory points, for the beer booth 5, and for the pizza 7. You don't score any victory points for any incomplete booths. However, if you have this token, it also counts as a complete water booth, so you score 3 victory points for that. Then the player with the most points is the winner. There are some small changes for a 2-player game, and I'm going to describe these changes now. First, for the setup, take 4 workers of the unused color. I'm going to use this purple and place it next to the hippies bus. These are considered to be the active workers for this dummy player. The dummy player doesn't have any resting workers or workers in a reserve. Only these 4 active workers. In addition, shuffle this deck of friends cards. It will be used to determine the actions of the dummy player. The game flow is the same as in a 3 to 6 player game, with one small exception. Anytime you place workers on the location spot with this heart symbol, which is usually the second and third space in any location, you activate a friend, a dummy player, and when you do, first reveal first card from the deck, and that determines the location for the dummy player. Here's letter A, B, C, and D. And then reveal the next one, and that determines the space on that location. So here we have A, B, C, and D. So here we have the location D and space A. Now take one of the dummy player's workers and place it on this designated location. If that location is occupied, place it to the next location to the right. If, for example, you would have to place it in the space C, but it's occupied, but also space D is occupied, then place it to the first empty space on the left. Here it would be space A. Then this dummy player can also activate the location, and it can happen in 2 different ways. First, if you have to place another dummy player worker in the location where the dummy player already has a worker, that immediately activates that location. Or if you have to place the dummy player worker in a location which is fully occupied, that also activates that location. The activation follows the standard activation rules. There are a few more additional rules. When you draw the cards from this friends deck, always place the next card face up on this discard pile, and only this top card is the public knowledge. You are not allowed to search through this discard deck. Then whenever this draw pile runs out, shuffle the discard pile and create a new draw deck. When you activate the location and the location contains the dummy player worker, the card in that space is simply discarded. And don't forget to move the countdown marker. And the dummy player doesn't score any victory points. It's only between you and the other player. And finally, the solo game. For the solo game you will need 8 of these dummy player workers. In a solo game you disregard these heart symbols. Dummy player is the first player in the game, and then you alternate taking turns. And with that there is one small change. The dummy player can have 1 worker in the location, and when there is another dummy player token placed in the same location, nothing happens yet. The dummy player would activate the location if they need to place the 3rd worker in the location, their own 3rd worker, or if the location is full. Either way, if the dummy player activates the location, you lose 2 victory points. Then during the final scoring, you get these 4 points if you have at least 10 meeples. You lose 4 victory points if you have less than 10 meeples. After the final scoring, check this table, and as you can see, you win the game only if you reach more than 100 victory points. So that's how you play Come Together. If you would have any questions or comments, I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. If you like the series, please subscribe. You can support the channel on the Patreon page or just clicking the thank you button under the video. You've been watching Game in a Nutshell. My name is Branislav Berec, and hope to see you next time. I would like to thank everyone who has ever supported the channel, and especially the current supporters listed on this page. If you too would like to support the channel in creation of videos like this and other video tutorials and other content on this channel, please visit the patreon.com/Nithrania.